You know what's wild? The moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop waiting by your phone, the moment you stop begging life to give you the tiniest bit of attention, something magical happens. You shift, your energy changes, and suddenly the very person you thought forgot you begins to feel your absence like a storm approaching quietly in the distance. Listen closely, because I want you to feel this in your bones. A man does not call because you remind him. He calls because he feels safe. He calls because he feels drawn. He calls because you become a space he longs to return to, not a space he fears walking into. And today, you're about to understand exactly why. So before we go deeper, let me start with this. When a woman understands emotional safety, she becomes unforgettable. She becomes the one his mind circles back to, even when he tries to distract himself. She becomes the calm he craves, the warmth he misses, the voice his day feels incomplete without. If you want him to call first, if you want him to reach for you without hesitation, if you want him to feel compelled to initiate, pursue, and show up, then listen. Because it starts inside you, not inside him. Here is the truth no one tells you: men don't fear love. They fear judgment. They fear not being enough. They fear disappointing someone who already expects too much. They fear showing their feelings and being misunderstood. And when a woman becomes a place of peace rather than pressure, his instincts change. His body responds differently. His mind softens. His walls drop. And suddenly, calling her becomes the easiest thing in the world. But let's go deeper, because emotional safety isn't softness. It isn't being overly accommodating. It isn't giving him a free pass to treat you however he wants. Emotional safety is not weakness. Emotional safety is strength. Calm strength, quiet strength, confident strength. The kind of strength that doesn't need to chase because it knows its value. The kind of strength that doesn't crumble when he goes silent because it knows silence doesn't define a woman. It exposes a man. When a man feels emotionally safe with you, he calls because he enjoys who he is when he's with you. He calls because he feels understood. He calls because he feels human, not criticized. He calls because he feels admired, not evaluated. And most importantly, he calls because being held with softness makes him want to show up with certainty. But many women don't realize when they're unintentionally suffocating emotional safety, not out of malice, not out of manipulation, but out of fear. Fear that he'll forget them, fear that he'll move on, fear that silence means rejection, fear that distance means disinterest, and fear creates pressure. Pressure creates misinterpretation. Misinterpretation makes him distance, and distance makes her panic. Then she texts more, calls more, explains more, tries to fix what was never broken, the belief that she needed to chase. What if I told you this? The moment you try to force closeness, you destroy the very closeness you're desperate for. Men call first when they feel emotionally safe, because emotional safety creates desire, not obligation. Obligation kills attraction. Safety builds it. You might think emotional safety means being available. No, emotional safety means being steady. A steady woman is magnetic. She doesn't overreact. She doesn't dramatize small things. She doesn't twist his words trying to find hidden meaning. She doesn't turn curiosity into interrogation. She doesn't let insecurity speak louder than connection. She is a space of calm confidence, and calm confidence is irresistible. Emotional safety is the art of letting him breathe without losing your place in his mind. It's giving him space, not distance. It's showing interest without surrendering your world. It's being warm without being overbearing. It's communicating your standards without demanding constant reassurance. Listen, when a man calls you first, it's because he feels like he can exhale with you. And most men don't realize how desperately they need that exhale until they meet a woman who offers it. Men are taught to be strong, composed, invulnerable. They aren't taught how to open up, how to share, how to soften. But when he meets a woman who makes emotional intimacy feel safe, he gravitates toward her without even understanding why. You become his emotional oxygen. something he didn't know he needed until he tasted it. You know what emotional safety sounds like to him? A woman who listens before she assumes. A woman who asks before she accuses. A woman who expresses her feelings without using them as weapons. A woman who respects his pace without losing hers. A woman who can hold her ground without raising her voice. When you embody this, he stops fearing you. Not fear in the sense of danger. Fear in the sense of disappointment, pressure, or emotional suffocation. When the fear disappears, pursuit begins. Let me tell you something powerful. A man's silence is not always rejection. Sometimes it's confusion, sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's overwhelm. Sometimes it's him wondering if showing up will cost him more than staying quiet. But when he feels safe with you, silence turns into effort. Distance turns into curiosity. Uncertainty turns into initiation. But emotional safety requires boundaries, not the loud ones, the quiet ones, the kind that don't need to be announced because you live them, the kind that speak through your energy, the kind that tell him, I want you, but I don't need you. I care about you, but I'm not chasing approval. I'm interested, but I'm not dependent. I'm here, but I'm not waiting. That energy, that is what makes him cool. Emotional safety is not just how you treat him. It's how you treat yourself. A woman with emotional self-awareness creates emotional safety for others. A woman who can regulate her fears, soothe her own insecurities, and ground her own thoughts becomes the most attractive energy in his world. Because she's not looking for him to fix her. She's not looking for him to complete her. She's not looking for him to validate her. She's choosing him, not clinging to him. And a man can feel the difference instantly. When he senses you don't need him to fill your emotional voids, he stops running. He stops hiding. He stops holding back. He stops playing games. Why? Because your energy tells him he's safe from judgment, safe from pressure, safe from losing himself, safe from disappointing you. That kind of safety, that makes him initiate. That makes him commit. That makes him show up willingly, not reluctantly. And when a man chooses you willingly, everything changes. You want to know how he feels emotional safety? Through consistency. Your consistency with your words. Your consistency with your tone. Your consistency with your boundaries. Your consistency with your energy, not shifting every time he takes a little longer to reply. Men notice emotional stability far more deeply than they ever admit. Most men won't say, I feel safe with her. They'll say things like, she's easy to talk to. She doesn't freak out over everything. She understands me. I feel good around her. She's different. Different means safe. Safe means attractive. Attractive means he calls first. Emotional safety also means respecting his individuality, the same way you respect your own. Not trying to mold his pace, not trying to force his availability, not trying to control how he expresses interest. When he feels allowed to be himself, he's drawn to you. When he feels pressured to be perfect, he shuts down, and silence becomes his escape rather than his pause. But when he feels free, emotionally, mentally, energetically, reaching for you feels like home. Now listen, emotional safety doesn't mean you silence your needs. It means you communicate them with calm clarity instead of fear-driven urgency. It means you express desire without begging for it in return. It means you say what you feel without turning it into a test. Men don't run from emotions. They run from emotional volatility. They run from unpredictability. They run from hidden expectations. But they move towards stability, toward grace, toward kindness, toward emotional maturity. When you pair emotional safety with emotional standards, you become unforgettable. Because you're not the woman who breaks down when he pulls away. You're the woman who breathes. You're the woman who stays calm. You're the woman who continues living. You're the woman who doesn't need to call 3 times to remind him she exists. Your silence speaks confidence, not fear. And that confidence, that quiet strength, is what makes him think, I don't want to lose her. I need to call her. A man who feels emotionally safe with you does not disappear. He gravitates, he initiates, he reaches out just to hear your voice. just to share his day, just to feel understood for a moment, just to connect with the energy that calms him, grounds him, softens him. Emotional safety doesn't just make him call, it makes him honest, it makes him vulnerable, it makes him real, it makes him show you the version of himself he hides from the world. That version of him only comes out in the presence of emotional safety. And the woman who creates that becomes unforgettable. If any part of this message touches your heart, pause, breathe, and tell me in the comments which line hit you the hardest. Your voice matters here. Your experience matters. And I'm right here walking this journey with you. You know what's fascinating? When a man senses that he is emotionally safe with you, something begins to shift inside him, quietly, subtly, yet profoundly. It's almost invisible at first. He doesn't announce it, he doesn't declare it, but his behavior betrays him long before his words ever catch up. And the very first sign is that he starts to reach out first. Not because he feels obligated, not because he fears losing you, not because you nagged, hinted, or pressured him. He calls because he feels calm in your presence, even when you're not physically there. He calls because your energy is not a demand, but an invitation. He calls because something inside him whispers, I'm okay here. I can show up here. I won't be attacked, cornered, or emotionally punished. And you need to hear this with your whole heart. Men don't run from love. They run from emotional danger disguised as love. And they don't chase distance. They chase the space where they feel understood. When you become that space, everything transforms, because here is the truth you were never taught. A woman's presence becomes irresistible when she creates a world where a man's masculinity is not threatened, but welcomed, not challenged in hostility, but met with emotional intelligence, not suffocated with expectations, but invited with grace. That presence is what makes him call first, not to fill silence, not to check a box, but because something about you feels like the safest place he's found in a long time. And it's not because you're endlessly patient or perfectly calm or emotionally available around the clock. It's because you operate from a different energy, an energy that says, I'm here, but I'm not chasing you. I'm open, but I'm not empty. I'm warm, but I'm not needy. I'm connected, but I'm not dependent. That is the emotional oxygen that makes a man feel safe enough to initiate. But there's another layer people rarely talk about. Men call first when they believe they can show up imperfectly, and you won't weaponize their vulnerabilities. You know what emotional danger feels like to them? It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's not an argument or a breakdown or a bold accusation. Emotional danger for men is subtle. It's the sigh that says you're disappointing me, the silence that feels like punishment, not peace, the sarcastic fine, the passive-aggressive do whatever you want. These things cut deeper than arguments ever could. They tell a man, my presence creates pressure, my voice creates conflict, my honesty will be used against me. And so he withdraws, he hesitates, he pauses before calling, because calling you no longer feels like connection, it feels like danger. But when you create the opposite energy, when you create emotional safety, he doesn't pause, he gravitates. And let me make this clear. Emotional safety doesn't mean letting him get away with disrespect. It doesn't mean tolerating breadcrumbs. It doesn't mean shrinking your worth. It simply means this: you express, not explode. You communicate, not corner. You reveal your feelings, not demand a reaction. And that subtle difference, it is the difference between a man who avoids contact and a man who actively initiates it. Because emotional safety is not about silence. It's about neutrality. It's about responding from a grounded place, not a wounded one. He feels the difference immediately, and he cannot resist it. Your energy becomes a sanctuary. Your voice becomes a soft place to land. Your presence becomes the one he naturally returns to, not because he has to, but because he wants to. And that is the moment you stop chasing calls and start receiving them. Because when you remove emotional fear from the equation, the truth about his behavior finally reveals itself. He stops calling out of obligation. He starts calling out of desire. He stops calling when pushed. He starts calling when pulled by your emotional gravity. He stops calling because he's supposed to. He starts calling because he misses the way you make him feel. That is the power you've always had. You just weren't taught how to use it. Your calm isn't weakness. Your softness isn't vulnerability. Your emotional intelligence isn't doing too much. It is the very energy that makes a man rise into his clarity. This is where the narrative shifts. This is where you step back, breathe and say, if you want access to me, bring peace. If you want connection with me, bring presence. If you want consistency with me, bring intention. And suddenly, he starts calling first. Not because you begged, not because you reminded him, and not because he fears losing you, but because showing up for you feels safe, meaningful, and emotionally grounding. This is the part where he realizes that calling you doesn't drain him, it restores him. And the irony? When you stop chasing the call, you start receiving the calls. Not by force, not by manipulation, but by alignment. You know, there's a moment in every connection where something subtle but powerful happens, where a man starts to feel the absence of the energy he once took for granted. And it doesn't begin with distance. It doesn't begin with anger. It doesn't even begin with silence. It begins with contrast. Because when a woman shifts her emotional energy from over-functioning to simply being, when she stops trying to fill every gap, solve every tension, initiate every conversation, and bridge every silence, something inside him wakes up. At first, it's small, barely noticeable, like a faint tug at the back of his mind, a question, a pull, an echo. And then slowly, inevitably, it becomes louder. Where is she? What changed? Why does it feel different without her? This part of the journey isn't about withdrawing love or punishing him. It's about giving the connection what it desperately needed all along. Space that allows his desire to breathe. Men don't call first because you demand it. They call first because they feel the shift of a woman who is no longer clinging to the outcome. And the moment he senses that shift, something begins to stir inside him. Something ancient, something instinctive, something that has been asleep for too long, a masculine pull to pursue. Because here is the psychological truth most women never hear. A man cannot feel desire in the same space where he feels monitored, managed, or emotionally controlled. Desire grows in the presence of freedom, not pressure. And when you stop trying to manage the connection, you create the very freedom that calls him back to you without being asked. When you no longer chase reassurance, no longer seek constant confirmation, no longer over-explain your worth, your absence becomes a mirror, not a punishment, not a threat, but a reflection that forces him to see what he contributes, a reflection that reveals whether he steps forward or retreats, a reflection that exposes what he truly feels when you're not filling the emotional space for him. Some women fear this moment. They think that stepping back means losing him, but the truth is far more liberating. If distance makes him leave, he was already halfway out the door. But if distance makes him come closer, he was always meant to stay. And the most powerful part, your shift doesn't need to be dramatic. You don't need to become cold, distant, or indifferent. You simply return to yourself, your joy, your passions, your peace, your glow. The emotional bandwidth that was once tied up analyzing his behavior becomes invested in rebuilding your own world. And he feels that shift like a tide pulling at his chest, because men don't call first when they feel watched. They call first when they feel drawn. And nothing draws a man more than a woman who stands in her worth quietly, confidently, without forcing outcome or chasing validation. This is the psychological step that hits him where words never could. When you stop trying to control the direction of the connection, you allow his direction to reveal itself. And suddenly, he's the one checking in. He's the one calling without hesitation. He's the one asking, "Are you free tonight?" He's the one wanting to close the distance he once left open, not because he's afraid of losing you, but because he feels the value of keeping you. And that is the shift you've been waiting for. The moment he realizes the connection doesn't work unless he contributes. The moment he sees the emptiness of the space you once filled for the both of you. The moment he notices the difference between your presence and your absence, and it hits him deeper than he expected. Men don't move without emotional clarity, and nothing creates clarity faster than the quiet elegance of a woman who no longer runs after someone who should be running after her. There's a part of this process that feels almost magical. When you redirect your focus back into your own life, something within you recalibrates. You stop overthinking every message. You stop trying to decode meaning from silence. You stop trying to decide how he feels for him. You simply let his actions show you. And this is where your power becomes undeniable. Because the woman who trusts her own value does not fear someone's silence. She observes it, she honors it, and she allows it to show her the truth. That truth becomes the filter through which you watch his behavior shift. A man who was once inconsistent suddenly becomes intentional. A man who once paused before calling becomes eager. A man who once let days pass effortlessly now feels the weight of your absence in ways he cannot ignore. This is where his psychology kicks in harder than ever before. Men do not chase chaos. They chase meaning. When you stop filling the gaps for him, the meaning of what you brought into his life finally takes shape. Your softness becomes rare. Your attention becomes precious. Your presence becomes something he doesn't want to risk losing. And that's when he calls. Not casually, not lazily, not half-heartedly. He calls with intention, with warmth, with emotional hunger, because finally he feels the void created by your shift. And that void makes him realize something he was too distracted to see before. You didn't need him. You chose him. And that difference, that beautiful, quiet difference, is what makes him call you first. Not out of habit, not out of fear, but out of desire, genuine, unforced, internal. His call becomes a reflection of something deeper. The connection finally feels balanced. You're not giving 90 while he gives 10. You're not initiating 80 while he gives 20. You're not holding the relationship together by its spine. He feels the weight now. He feels the responsibility. He feels the desire to participate. And suddenly, he's the one who remembers the small details. He's the one who checks if you got home safely. He's the one who says, "When can I see you?" He's the one who opens emotional doors that were once sealed shut. Because here is the psychological truth. Most women are never told. Men don't rise for women who overextend themselves. Men rise for women who stand in their values so firmly that he has to step up just to meet them where they are. You don't chase. You don't pressure. You don't pull. You don't force. Your value does the calling for you. And that is why he calls you first. He calls you because your energy became a place where he feels both freedom and connection, the exact combination that stirs a man's instinct to pursue. He calls because the absence of your old energy, your overgiving, overthinking, overtrying, creates a contrast he can't ignore. He calls because the silence that once frightened you now empowers you. He calls because your shift forced him to feel something he's been avoiding for too long. What if she drifts away before I realize what she meant to me? And that moment, that realization, is the beginning of his transformation. He calls first because he wants to keep you, not because he fears losing you. He calls first because you stopped chasing the connection, and he started chasing the feeling of you. He calls first because a woman who centers herself becomes the gravitational pull he cannot escape. And as the final piece of this journey, you must remember this. When a man finally starts calling first, it is not a reward for your patience. It's a reflection of your evolution, your growth, your boundaries, your emotional clarity, your willingness to step back and allow truth to reveal itself. You didn't manipulate him. You didn't trick him. You didn't pressure him. You inspired him, and that inspiration lasted longer, hit deeper, and awakened him faster than any words ever could. Because, in the end, he called not because you asked, but because he finally felt what your absence meant.